on the go and calling it to order. Welcome staff, welcome members of council, and welcome those members of the public who are joining us this evening. So with that, I will start off with reading our council commitment. The council commitment for the town of Penetanguishene. We are grateful for the many gifts which have been bestowed on Penetanguishene and its citizens, including the gifts of freedom, opportunity, and peace that we enjoy. May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. We ask that all in attendance and those who could not be here assist us in promoting good government. May our decisions as members of council be enlightened, and may we all be strengthened in our awareness of our duties and our responsibilities. May we be granted the wisdom, knowledge, will, and understanding to preserve the good fortune of the town for the benefit of all and to make good laws and wise decisions. Thank you all for attending. We will now move on to the approval of the agenda, and that the agenda of the regular council meeting of September 8, 2021 be approved as presented. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Cummings and Councillor Rose, all in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to 5, which is a declaration of pecuniary interest. If anyone so has, so declare or at the appropriate time. Public meeting, zoning bylaw amendment file number ZA62-2021, 9597. It's a public meeting presentation from IPS 95 and 97 Point Street. And I believe with that, I would say that under this is being a public meeting under the Planning Act to consider an application to amend the town's zoning bylaw. The purpose of this public meeting is not to engage in a debate regarding the merits of the application, nor is it intended to be a question and answer session. It is to provide an opportunity for the public to make comments and for council members to ask clarifying questions. To the public, this is your opportunity to speak in support or in opposition of this application based on planning merits, and we encourage you to do so. In accordance with the Planning Act, if a person does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions before bylaw is passed on or an approval given, you may not be entitled to appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal, and you may not be added as a party to a hearing on an appeal to the LPAT unless in the opinion of the LPAT there are reasonable grounds to do so. And with that, I would probably ask the planner, Owen Taylor, if he would give a council and public an update on this application.
Thank you, Your Worship. The application for a zoning bylaw amendment for the property at 95 and 97 Point Street is to rezone the properties from the residential first density R1S zone to the residential multiple density exception RM zone. The rezoning will facilitate the development of a 2-story apartment building having 5 residential units, each with independent entrances. There is no definition in the town zoning bylaw that exists for an apartment building with independent entrances. As such, the proposed exception relates to amending the definition of an apartment dwelling to mean a building consisting of 5 dwelling units which have independent entrances from the street level. Public comments have been received with respect to this application, and they've been included in the agenda provided to council. And we also have agents Innovative Planning Solutions on the line who will be making a presentation to the public and council.
Very good. Thank you very much. Now, if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to make comments in opposition or in support, state your name and address and we will recognize you. Is there anyone?
Worship?
Yes. Andrea?
Thank you. I think at this time IPS was going to make their presentation on the application.
Oh, okay, fine. Go ahead then.
Good evening. Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for that, Andrea. Good evening, everyone, council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Greg Barker. I'm a planner with Innovative Planning Solutions, representing the applicant for a zoning bylaw amendment on lands known as 95 and 97 Point Street to facilitate the development of a 5-unit apartment building. The subject site is shown here in red. It is a double wide through lot with 33 meters of frontage on both Point Street and Shanahan Road, measuring 0.2 hectares in size. The lands are currently vacant of any buildings or structures. The town of Penetanguishene is identified provincially and at a county level as a primary settlement area, and the subject lands are designated neighborhood area in the town's official plan, and as Zoe Taylor had indicated, are currently zoned residential first density special, or R1S, in the town zoning bylaw. The lands, they slope both to the west, down from 95 towards 97, as well as from points down towards Shanahan. The site is well situated within an existing residential area, which contains primarily single and semi-detached dwellings, along with some newer medium density uses as well. The site is less than 1 kilometer west of Main Street, including various commercial amenities, as well as in proximity to a number of parks and open space areas, including Rotary Park and the Trans-Canada Trail. The site also benefits from being located close to both elementary and secondary schools. The property is currently well serviced with existing public service facilities and municipal infrastructure, including water, sewage, stormwater, as well as existing public transit stops. As mentioned, the County of Simcoe official plan designates the lands as settlement and located within the delineated built boundary as shown in the image on the left. The town's official plan, as shown on the right, designates the lands as neighborhood area and also within the delineated built boundary. From an official plan perspective, the proposed 5-unit apartment building is a permitted use. The town zoning bylaw, as mentioned, the lands are zoned R1S, similar to many of the surrounding properties, with a limited mix of additional zones in the area. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment, Your Worship, has been prepared in accordance with the conceptual site plan shown here, consisting of a 2-story apartment building containing 5 units, representing a density of 26.4 units per hectare. There are 2 units proposed on the ground floor with access from Point Street, and 2 lower level walkout units are proposed with access from the Shanahan Road side. The 5th unit is proposed on the 2nd story, which would also be accessed from Point Street. The units will range in size from just under 1,000 square feet to just over 1,100 square feet, featuring 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, all of which would have separate and individual entrances to each unit. And Your Worship, on this slide, these arrows that are indicated on here represent the separate and individual accesses to the various units. A total of 10 parking spaces are shown, providing for 2 spaces per unit, where the bylaw would otherwise require a total of 8. And each of the main floor units would be provided 1 garage parking space, as well as 1 driveway space on Point Street. The upper unit would have a driveway space on Point Street and 1 on Shanahan, and the 2 lower level units would each have 2 spaces on Shanahan. And I'd like to emphasize that each parking space, Your Worship and Council, they would be dedicated to individual tenants. It would not be available on a first come, first served basis. They would be assigned based on the units. This concept plan also provides generous setbacks to adjacent property lines, including 6-meter side yard setbacks, 8 meters to Point Street, and nearly 40 meters to Shanahan Road. The balance of the site would be dedicated to landscaped open space and amenity areas. And should this application be approved, would be subject to site plan control to address design considerations such as landscaping, lighting, engineering matters, and architectural design, all to the satisfaction of the town. Conceptual elevations have been developed to assist with visualizing the proposed built form. Architecturally, the intent was to mimic that of a 2-car garage detached dwelling. And as seen here, the front elevations illustrate, so the front elevations are in the top left, which illustrate the 3 doors to access the various units, the 2 on the ground floor and 1 on the upper level, as well as 2 separate garage doors. You can also visualize the proposed setbacks from the upper level unit to each side of the building in an effort to mitigate privacy concerns. The side elevations conceptually illustrate the topography of the site, including doors to access each of the lower level units, which are shown on one on this side, as well as one on this side. The lower level units are provided a private covered patio, while the ground floor units are provided a private covered porch at the front and a private balcony at the rear. And the upper unit is provided with a private balcony spanning the width of the unit as well. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment, it aims to rezone the lands from the current R1S zone to the RM exception zone to accommodate the development of the site as proposed in the conceptual site plan. The proposed exception, as Owen had alluded to, introduces a site-specific definition for an apartment dwelling. The intent of this exception, Your Worship and members of council and members of the public, is to recognize the unique sort of design that has been brought forward, which would propose or provide, individual independent entrances, as opposed to what you might think of with a typical apartment dwelling as sort of a common entrance with a lobby and common hallways and things of that nature. That is not the intent with this application. And all other provisions of the RM zone are met by this proposal, including setbacks, coverage, parking, frontage, area, and unit sizes. Recognizing the character of the area, the proposed development is, in our opinion, compatible from a design and massing perspective with existing built forms. The building is designed to mimic the appearance of a single detached or semi-detached dwelling unit, including step backs for the upper unit. The height of the proposed building is less than the currently permitted 11 meters, measuring just over 8 meters in height, and consistent with and respectful of the character of the area. And while a number of housing types exist in the area, the built form is predominantly single or semi-detached, and this proposal will increase the range of housing options in the area to a wider demographic and contributes to a complete community. From a provincial and county planning policy perspective, as mentioned, the entire municipality is considered a primary settlement area, and the lands are located within the delineated built boundary where servicing is available. The province and county identify settlement areas as the focus of growth and development and encourages development which increases housing stock and the range or mix of housing options, including rental units. Primary settlement areas are intended to accommodate higher densities and more compact built forms. This in turn promotes efficient use of land and infrastructure, thereby reducing servicing costs and minimizing land consumption, all while fostering a healthy, sustainable, and complete community. The development would also assist the town in achieving their minimum intensification targets, albeit on a relatively small scale. At the local level, the development represents small-scale infill on otherwise vacant lands within the delineated built boundary and within the neighborhood designation, which permits small-scale apartments as proposed. It's my opinion the development and built form is compatible with the character of the area while offering additional apartment rental options, which are generally more affordable or attainable than lower density housing options and available to a wider demographic. I believe the application contributes to the range of housing types in the area and assists with meeting anticipated growth and demographic changes while conforming to the town's official plan, which encourages all forms of housing. The development also satisfies the land use and built form policies established under section 4.2.2 of the official plan, while ensuring detailed design elements are implemented through site plan control. So in summary, Your Worship and members of council, an application to rezone the lands from the R1S to the RM exception zone has been submitted and intended to facilitate the development of a small-scale 5-unit apartment building. The planning policies mandate growth within existing built-up areas where services are available to support such growth, which includes the subject lands. This development provides a slight density increase in a location where growth and intensification is encouraged. It's my opinion that the proposal conforms to the residential character of the area while contributing to the housing stock by providing alternative housing options. The development provides a compact built form, makes efficient use of land and existing infrastructure, and in my opinion, conforms to or is consistent with provincial, county, and town planning policies and represents good planning. So that concludes my presentation, Your Worship. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. If you would give me back my screen, and now I would ask members of the public if they have any questions or comments in opposition or in support of this application, to state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Mayor, John Maynard.
Yes, John?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. My name is John Maynard, and my wife Susan and I reside at 91 Points. And thank you for the opportunity to address you here tonight.
Thank you.
I understand that each of you has received our formal written objection to this proposal in your documents, and I trust that most of you have actually had a chance to read it. Be very kind. This document was written and submitted on behalf of 28 local homeowners and residents on Point Street, a number of whom are here tonight. And if you have your cameras on, you might just wave so the council knows who you are. We are a bit light in our attendance tonight. We are currently praying for 4 of our group who are currently undergoing serious health issues. Another 5 of our group are still away on long-planned post-Labor Day trips, but I hope some of them will be able to sign in. My role here tonight, I have been asked by this group to act as our facilitator. And with your permission, I will now introduce in turn the selected speakers from our group of 28 who will each summarize one of each of our 4 points of objection. I will then conclude our presentation, and we expect to be somewhere around 12 to 15 minutes. Mr. Mayor, is that acceptable?
Normally we allow 10 minutes, John.
Okay, we're going to have different people. We'll try and keep it to that if we may. Okay, thank you, sir. The first one, this proposal, we think this proposal will have a significant negative impact on the nature of our long-standing community, which is overwhelmingly residential single-family owned. And to put some personal context to this issue, allow me to introduce one of our longest-standing residents on Points, Mrs. Monique Kingma at 86 Points. Monique, are you there?
Yes, thank you, John. Good evening, Mayor and member of council. My name is Monique Kingma, and my husband David and I own and reside at 86 Point Street. In fact, I grew up in this house. My parents and I have been here since 1961. Before offering my own comments, I've been asked to share some thoughts of a very dear next door neighbor who could not be with us tonight. Here are words of Joanne Bath. Firstly, I wish to apologize that I am not here in person tonight. However, I do wish to be heard. I have lived at 88 Point Street for 61 years, and all this time, our community, as an R1S single detached dwelling zone, has made for neighbors knowing, respecting, and helping one another. I do understand that things change, and growth is part of that. But this particular change will come with consequences. You see it already with the increase of traffic on Point Street between speeding cars, trucks, bikes, you name it, we've got it. Don't get me started on parking, because there is none. From years ago, being able to play in the street to now having to stand on the front lawn to do a traffic check before you cross the road or back out of your driveway. And in the winter, when the snowbanks are so high, needing to help guide you to get out to go to work, as a blind spot on the hill is a challenge at the best of times. I do believe this proposed development will add to the stress already endured by us all. who have and continue to live here on Point Street. As far as Shannon Ann Lane, please, it is a lane. Terrifying to even meet another car, terrifying to walk in the lane. The hills alone speak for themselves. This includes the John Street Hill and cars coming up and out onto Point Street. I've always believed that bylaws were there to protect our communities. For the town to change this bylaw to accommodate a development where you are looking at a landlord-tenant situation, landlord is absent, makes this untenable. I would like to make it perfectly clear that my husband and I.
Someone else has a mic on. Okay, carry on.
Thank you. I would like to make it perfectly clear that my husband and I are opposed to this development. Think safety first. Thank you, Joanne M. Bath, Patnode, and Edward B. Bath. Now I'd like to include my own words, but in very similar thought. Back when I was one of many children in the neighborhood, we were able to run free from home to home, climbing trees and playing games like hide and seek and kick the can. We never had to worry about street traffic, and we were comforted in knowing that our friends' parents were there for us if needed. We were not just a neighborhood, we were a family. This neighborhood togetherness has obviously left an impact on many of us because 5 of my neighbors, including Joanne, still reside in our family homes. As one of the now childhood homeowners in this neighborhood, I worry about what a multifamily dwelling will have on the value of my home. My parents and I have worked for so many years keeping the upgrades to the highest standards. The integrity of my home is my heritage, and to maintain a high standard of pride in my property and community, it hurts me to think that this would be all in vain. When I stand out in the front of my yard and look at the homes of my neighbors and know who still lives in their childhood home and the new families that respect and care for the houses and properties that they now call home, I am very proud to be a part of this community and a community that I have helped build. In keeping with the care of my neighborhood, I am opposed of this multiplex development. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Monique. That was very well done.
John, before we carry on, I stand to be corrected. There is no time limit on a public meeting, okay?
Thank you, sir. And we will be brief. I don't think any of the 4 or 5 of us are going to be more than a couple of minutes like Joanne, like Monique was here. But Mayor and Council, I hope you've heard in Monique's voice a bit of the sense of frustration with this proposal and yet her passion for the neighborhood. And this is felt by our entire group. I'd also just like you to know that Monique was asked to present this, in part because she's so polite, but also because she's the only one who promised she could do this without getting really angry. And you need to know there is a pent-up anger in this group on points today. Thank you for that point. Our second objection is that this proposal could have a negative impact on property values, decreasing the value for both owners and the town of Penetanguishene. Again, to put some personal context to this issue, allow me to introduce one of our newest residents on points, Ms. Julie Cook, who lives at 89 Points. Julie, you there?
I am, John. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. As new residents of Point Street, we are here tonight to share with you our total dismay with regards to the proposed rezoning and multi-unit development of 95 and 97 Point Street. We took possession of our home at 2021 after paying top dollar in a very competitive market. We had researched Penetang and were attracted by the commitment from this council to preserving the distinct heritage and natural environment of the area with a focus on keeping a small town feel. We were excited to see a town with a vision and a mission statement that committed to building on the distinct heritage and making Penetang exceptional, highlighting conscientious planned growth and development and a safe and substantial infrastructure. We are concerned that the proposed 5-unit rental property will only marginally add to the tax base while reducing property values and quality of life for the surrounding homes, ours included. While we appreciate the need for continued development, we do not understand why the current zoning bylaw needs to be amended in such a way as to detract from what is already a great place to live. Having 2 single detached dwellings on these lots would serve to reinforce the small town character and quality of life which we thought we were buying into. We respectfully ask Council to reject this proposal so that property values for current and future homeowners on Point Street are protected. Allowing this proposal to happen on our street will negatively affect our quality of life and detract from the obvious residential charm and character of our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Julie. Mayor and councilors, as we stated in our written submission, we fully understand and would support the current zoning and existing residential housing with a potential alternate unit in each. And for the sake of a 5th unit and one happy, non-resident investor landlord, if this proposal is accepted, other property values in the vicinity are likely to be diminished over time. This will not make for increased town revenues, nor will this make for happy homeowning residents, and I'm sorry, Mayor, voters. And with that, I'd like to go on to our third issue objection. And this is probably for those of us currently living near this particular location on Points. Our third objection is one that we are most concerned about. We believe that the traffic dangers inherent in the pedestrian and car access components of this proposal, I'm sorry, these are very tough words, are nothing short of dangerous and naive. And to explain why those words are, we think, are appropriate, let me introduce Ms. Julie Stocks, a lifelong Penetanguishene resident who has raised her family on Points. Julie?
Hello, I'm happy to share that my husband and I have lived at our current address for more than 21 years, and we are very fortunate to live in a neighborhood along with wonderful neighbors, and it's just been a wonderful experience thus far. But having been here all these years and raising 2 small children, now grown up, I can personally testify to the incredible high volume traffic, the high speeds on our road, and the numerous pedestrians that are coming by the home, including mothers with strollers, school-age children walking to school, dog walkers, and many other alike. The potential development is located on a particular area of the street that is part of a very steep incline, and there is a very obvious blind spot with the cars climbing this hill. These 5 units, with 3 proposed to be at the level of Point Street, could potentially have obviously 1 car, if not 2 per unit, plus visitors. So those visitors are going to park along the boulevard, hence obstructing line sights for pulling in and out of this driveway, not to mention the enormous snowbanks that we get in the wintertime here on Point Street, and garbage bins and many other things that are only going to contribute to a congested, dense housing unit that would be built on this location. The lower unit is proposing 2 units that will be exiting and entering onto a laneway, which is a very narrow laneway, which I walk personally with my dog, and I have to move to the side of the road for a car to even get past me. So these are very significant concerns that we have for safety for our neighborhood. The elevation is quite different as well from Point Street to Shanahan Lane, and none of us along this stretch even access our lower areas of our properties during the winter because of the icy conditions. Even the municipal garbage truck will not go down John Street, and the owners of 85 Point Street have to put their garbage down on Shanahan because of the icy and dangerous conditions. So it is for these reasons we are concerned the lower tenants may actually end up using the upper level entrance, only adding to the constant problems of excessive amounts of cars and obstructing viewpoints and the dangers of the traffic. So it's for this reason, with our concerns, that we are asking that council will direct municipal staff to commission an independent traffic and safety and parking impact study, so that we can then have a second public meeting to review these results so that council can make a very informed and comprehensive final decision on this proposed application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. That was very, very well done. I'm going to now move on to item number 4, and we will come back on our summary to this particular item Julie has addressed. But many pages of the applicant's proposal speak to why this proposal is consistent with all sorts of planning principles. And some of their arguments, even to me, seem to suggest that the applicant is doing the town a favor by submitting this proposal. Our group is very fortunate to count Mr. Todd Stocks among our group, who in a past career was a planner in an adjacent township. Todd has made a number of observations in our written submission that put the applicant's broad arguments in a different light when looking at this very specific proposal. And I believe, Todd, you would now like to highlight 3 of these tonight for the mayor and council. Todd?
Sure, thank you. Good evening, members of council. We fully agree that the development of the vacant service lands within the existing built-up area town, that's good planning. We don't disagree. Right, the development of 2 single detached dwellings with each with an accessory unit, that's also good planning in the R1S zone. In fact, we think that it's better planning than rezoning to put an apartment complex in and amongst an established neighborhood. We believe that's important to support intensification and diversity of use as envisioned in the town's current OP. We would argue that the zoning and diversity is readily visible when you consider the built form on Point Street as you move from Main to Owen to John, and John to Park. All right, as you go along the street, this highlights the intentional strategy that's already in place of promoting residential development of a diminishing density the farther you are from the core. The RM zoning exception as proposed, it's not in keeping with the zoning principle. We also considered against the town target of 40%. It's our understanding that the county of Simcoe has been tracking intensification in the town over the past several years and has calculated the town is meeting that target at a current rate of 48% of new growth occurring within the built boundary. It's also important to highlight the current inventory. The town presently has 7 properties zoned residential multiple density, 2 of which are currently vacant. An additional RM zoning on Point Street is not needed. Simple development of these properties within the R1S zone requirements will continue to help allow intensification targets to be met and exceeded. So in summary, the proposed zoning amendment should be denied for the simple reason that the existing zoning on the subject properties remains appropriate and continues to represent good planning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Todd. So this brings me to our conclusion. Our group of 28, in summary, we're asking you, the council, to simply enforce our existing bylaws. Namely, R1S means 1 single detached dwelling with the option to have a basement or attached suite not exceeding 550 feet. We expect and have no objection to having 2 houses, 1 on each lot that meets these requirements of R1S. We have and are all following these rules, and in some cases have just recently bought into them at pretty inflated prices. The new owners of 95 and 97 Points knew these rules when they recently purchased the property. We don't believe it's in the town's interest to disrupt a stable community to accommodate someone who doesn't and won't likely even be living there and is only making an investment, all for the sake of 1 additional unit. So we urge planning staff and council to reject this proposal simply on this basis. However, if in your wisdom you see that you wish to continue to consider this proposal further, we urgently request that you direct the planning team to commission an independent safety impact study to fully assess the associated risks and likely result that this proposal will have on pedestrian and car traffic, street parking and sidewalk blockage, and access and egress from these properties. Recognizing that the 5 parking spots on Shanahan are a good 3 to 4 floors below the building. And all of the access on Point Street is occurring in a very dangerous blind spot. Because of the serious nature of this risk already known to the 28 of us local residents, we also ask you to commit right now to convening a second public meeting to discuss the results of this study when they are available. And with that, Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you for your time. Unless you have questions, we will stand adjourned.
Thank you, John. And with that, I have to bring it back to the applicant or agent. And so I would ask Greg or Owen if they have any further comments or concluding comments.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'd like to thank the members of the public. Just want to acknowledge I have been listening, taking notes. I've also had a chance to review the material that was posted on the agenda. Your Worship and members of Council, what I would like to do, just given the nature and the comprehensive level of comments, is go through them in a little more detail. Provide staff with a response to those comments, as well as the correspondence on the agenda, as well as if there are any follow-up comments from yourself, Your Worship, or members of Council, and provide, like I say, a resubmission or response package to staff as this project proceeds. But one thing that kind of sticks out for me that I do want to say is, there's an acknowledgement that 4 units could be developed here, and so we're really boiling this down to a 5th unit that seems to be the sticking point. And there seem to be a lot of cumulative concerns that I don't think is necessarily attributed to the additional of 1 unit. But having said that, there's quite a detailed piece of correspondence provided, which is appreciated. And we will, again, with any comments received from Council, take that away from this meeting and provide a response to staff in short order. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Greg. Now I will go to members of Council. If there are any members of Council who would like to ask questions in regards to the information presented this evening. Councillor LaRose.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just 2 quick ones. One was snow storage and visitor parking.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Certainly, snow storage is a detailed design element that we would incorporate or address through the site plan process. From a visitor parking perspective, the town zoning bylaw requires 1.5 parking spaces per unit. Given the nature of the size of the units and the tenure, there is no guarantee that every tenant would have 2 vehicles. So I guess what I'm saying is we are providing 2 parking spaces per unit, which exceeds the requirements of the zoning bylaw.
But you did indicate that they would be assigned parking. So if they're assigned parking, that would be among the tenants. So I would like to see if you were going to go anywhere, was there any extra dedicated visitor parking?
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. At this point, based on the concept we have, there's no dedicated visitor parking shown. However, that is something we could consider moving forward to see if that can fit on the site. I certainly think there is certainly sufficient room. Whether or not that is tenable from the neighbor's perspective is another issue. However, like I say, from a zoning perspective, the 1.5 spaces per unit is required, and it is exceeded here. I did indicate the parking spaces would be dedicated. So for example, unit 1 would be assigned parking spaces 1 and 2. Whether or not unit 1 owns 1 vehicle, 2 vehicles, no vehicles, that would open up the ability for them to have visitors in their parking spaces, but not a general sort of pool of visitor parking spaces at this time.
Okay, anyone else, members of Council, that I would ask Councillor Levy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to our planners here tonight, Andrea and Owen. Mr. Maynard mentioned the 550 square foot accessory unit, and I would just like one of them to clarify what the new rules are for accessory apartments.
Andrea?
Thanks. Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Levy. So a couple of years ago, we updated the general provisions for accessory apartments. And so that general provision covers the required accessory dwelling units for it. So the bylaw itself has some old language in it about that accessory floor space, but it could be, it's covered under the general provision section after the zoning update a couple of years ago.
Okay, thank you. Further questions from members of council? I don't see any further questions from members of council. So with that, I would ask our planner, Andrea, to summarize the next steps in this process.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So as Greg had mentioned, we'll take this back and probably discuss the comments and receive the applicant's resubmission on addressing the public comments and come back to council with a report. I'm not going to suggest that'll be October's meeting, but we will do our best. It shouldn't be too much further. October and November, a follow-up report would be presented.
Okay, and also with that, Madam Planner, can I ask you the question as to how we will be dealing with item 10 under our agenda?
So thank you, Your Worship. You threw me there for a second. Yeah, so this matter will come up as matters for discussion. And so we can receive further comments from council at that point for discussion. And then if there's any other direction that council wishes to give staff with respect to this application, it'll be dealt with at that point.
Thank you. So I thank everyone for their participation, and we will now move on to deputations and presentations, of which we have none. Adoption of minutes not already confirmed, and that the following minutes of council meetings be confirmed and adopted as circulated. Council, August 11th, 2021, and August the 11th, 2021. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Levy and Deputy Mayor, all in favor? That is carried, thank you. Consent agenda, we have none. Matters for consideration, and A, it's a verbal update from the Chief Administrative Officer re COVID-19 municipal impacts, and the recommended action is that the CAO's verbal updates be received for information. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor LaRose, Councillor Mayotte, all in favor? Thank you. And with that, Mr. CAO, if you would, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to walk council through and members of the public that have joined or are participating from home, just to walk them through a few updates that transpired with respect to COVID-19 since our last meeting last month. As members of council and members of the public are aware, on August 17th, the province put in place COVID-19 vaccination policies mandatory for high-risk settings, which included directive mandating hospitals as well as home and community care service providers to have a COVID-19 vaccination policy for their employees, contractors, students, volunteers, etc. That policy was required to be in place as of September 7th, which was just yesterday. On September 1st, the province made an announcement that essentially beginning September 22nd, a vaccination passport certificate would be required to be put in place, and ultimately proof would be required to enter a number of different settings by individuals that they have in fact been vaccinated. Beginning October 22nd, 1 month later, they put in place, or they've identified that they'll be putting in place what the province has called a QR code, as well as the verification app that essentially kind of completes the certificate program that they've put in place. And that's just a number of settings, primarily of which that will affect us as a municipality is our sports and recreation type facilities. On September 1st, our local health unit, Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, provided some communication through Dr. Gardner, one of which was a letter of instruction that was updated with a number of different requirements that businesses in Simcoe and Muskoka must have in place. The second document that he pushed out to businesses in Simcoe and Muskoka is with respect to a recommendation that all local employers put in place a vaccination policy for their business or for their organization to ensure compliance from a workplace perspective. I will note that there's been a number of conversations locally here at the town of Penetanguishene at a staff level, as well as recently yesterday with our control group. And as I've communicated to staff earlier today and members of council, I guess late this afternoon, early this evening, we are in the early stages as an organization of developing a draft policy with respect to vaccination requirements for our staff. With respect to town services and town updates from my last verbal report, a couple things to note. With respect to town hall and our administrative facilities, as of essentially yesterday, Tuesday, September 7th, our teams and our cohort model that we were operating under was essentially ended. We did bring all staff back to our facilities, and as such, we no longer close our administration facilities from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock for lunch closure. The second piece to that is that there are no longer appointments required in our planning and community development department with respect to building and planning related matters, given that we have deployed our staff all back to the office. With respect to the local public health unit vaccination sites, just a couple numbers and stats that I thought might interest council. At the beginning of August, as council's aware, local public health wrapped up the mass vaccination clinics that they were operating, one of which was at our Penetanguishene Community Center arena. Between Midland and Penetanguishene, they had a total of 126 clinic days, 31 of which were in Penetanguishene. So we had 28 clinic days at the arena, and then 3 pop-up clinic dates that we've hosted to date, or that public health has hosted to date, I should say. In total, there's, and these numbers might be slightly off, but a little under 57,000 doses that were administered between the two communities of Midland and Penetanguishene sites, about 12,500 of which were in Penetanguishene. So I think it's important to note that a number of players played a key role with these vaccination sites. But a huge thank you to the staff and the volunteers from our local public health, as well as our recreation and our fire staff for their hard work and the logistics in making these clinics run smoothly. The health unit has since transitioned to community pop-up clinics. They are continuing and eagerly hosting additional pop-up clinics in the near future. There's actually temporarily public health is looking to bring the provincial Go Bus, which is a mobile clinic, to Penetanguishene and Midland in the coming month or so, as another opportunity to provide vaccinations for the public. I guess really what I would just say in kind of conclusion that, as we continue to confront this Delta-driven fourth wave, our control group continues to be close to the pulse. We continue to monitor the trends and the data and the numbers, and certainly will continue to keep the health and well-being of not only our staff, but also the community top of mind. And as changes occur, we will continue to communicate those in as many fashions as possible to council, to the community, and certainly to our staff. And with that, Your Worship, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, members of council, do we have any questions through to the CIO? Councillor Levy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. CAO for the update. I would suggest that when it comes to vaccine mandates for town hall staff and our affiliates, the fire department, et cetera, that council has the opportunity to vote on that. We're always being reminded that we set policy, and I think this is a very, very important policy decision. And whatever council decides is what should happen. So I'll leave that with you, gentlemen, and that's my view.
Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Worship. I'm not sure that that I have a specific response other than I appreciate Councillor Levy's comments. As I said, we've had some conversation at control group just with respect to a proposed policy as it relates to administration staff. And certainly I think there's potentially opportunity as well for council to have conversation should they wish around vaccinations for members of council. But certainly I appreciate those comments from Councillor Levy.
Thank you. Further comments or questions from members of council? Councillor Levy again. You're muted, Councillor Levy. Still muted.
There we go. I still would strongly suggest that whether we decide to bring in a vaccine mandate or not is a council decision. And I would ask the mayor to put this on the next available agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any comments or concerns? Councillor Vademoncoeur.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not sure if this is a question to ask now or a question to ask later in the agenda under inquiries, but now that September has rolled around and the fall minor sports season is upon us, whether it's minor hockey or figure skating or my favorite, basketball, you know, we're gearing up and I'd like to get an update in terms of where we stand with our arena and the ice and how we're doing with respect to our bookings. Are we getting our people back in, not only our minor sports, but our adult groups? I know a number of adult shinny hockey players play on a regular basis, and I'm sure for their mental health, they're anxious to get back going, just as the kids are anxious to get back going. So I'd just like to get an update in terms of where we're at with respect to getting our fall sports season underway. Thank you.
With that, I think that we could ask our Director of Recreation and Culture to give us a response to that. Sherry?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Vademoncoeur. So in less than 10 minutes, the Kings will be taking the ice for their first skate of the season. So the arena is opening today. I know minor hockey gets on the ice tomorrow around 5:30. The skating group starts on Monday. So we will have our primary user groups on the ice. The men's hockey, the recreational league, has opted not to run a season at this point in time. Once we get our user groups comfortable, we're going to be looking to move towards opening our public skating program again. And we did open some registrations for other rec programs, and I apologize, but I don't have that information at my fingertips right now in the same time, but I'm happy to follow up with council and share that information. So certainly the ice is in and our groups are getting back into the swing of things. I think some of their registrations aren't quite where they have been in the past, but that might take time, and we're trying to support them and help them get the word out so that the community does know that they're back in business.
Okay, thank you, Madam Director. And I would think Councillor Vademoncoeur, does that satisfy you?
Thank you, it does. And certainly from the ice perspective, that's great to hear. Obviously, as the practices continue, we'll get into some games. And some of us do go to watch hockey and whatnot. So have we established some capacity limits for our arena based on our current capacity? My understanding of the regulation is that for indoor sports, we can set a capacity maximum of 50%. So with respect to, say a Junior C Kings game, with respect to the audience, do we have a a number that we're able to work with, and then through that to minor hockey that for people attending and whatnot. And then there's the Brian Orser Hall, and I remember attending meetings where the cloggers were actively going. So I would imagine we've looked at capacity limits in our Brian Orser Hall as well. So I'm just curious, as we transition into games, what our limits are for spectators and whatnot to watch the games being played. Thank you.
Madam Director, are you able to give that information?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Vadamoncourt. So you're correct in that the legislation does allow up to 50% capacity. However, the caveat to that is that people have to be able to socially distance. So if they can't socially distance, then you can't allow 50% capacity. So we've done some measurements in the rink. We're starting at spectator capacity of 70. Is where we're comfortable to open up the spectator portion. We'll also we can only have 7 people in our change rooms because you have to be able to socially distance in the change rooms as well. So in order to have games and have dressing room space available for everybody and be able to physically distance, we have to, before we further open up the facility to programs, multi-use space rentals and those pieces, we want to make sure that we can get the groups on, have the space capacity that they need to put on their skates, get ready, and do all those necessary pieces. And so this is why we're not just opening everything off the get-go till we make sure that functionally it works before we increase any capacities with spectators and other programming.
Okay, Madam. Thank you, Madam. Now, I think, gentlemen, I see Councillor Cummings and then Councillor Vadamoncourt again, and it's, I think, probably something that we have to get some feedback on at some other date. This is not part of tonight's agenda, where we're going and what is happening here. So I think that we will leave this for Councillor Cummings. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is part of our agenda, municipal impacts of COVID. I just have a question. Are we, or how we policing vaccinations for spectators or anybody coming into our facilities?
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. So the province has made the announcement that effective the 22nd, that will be a requirement. However, the province has yet to provide the legislation to go with it. So we had our weekly meeting with public health and all municipalities with rec programming and rec facilities. Public health was not able to provide any guidance or clarity on how we will implement those pieces just yet. Like us, they sit and wait for the province to release the fine print.
Thank you.
Councillor Vadamoncourt, third time.
Sorry, Worship. I was just going to say that I'm not going to comment anymore, other than I'll speak at committee of the whole when we get to the section, and we'll talk about a referral at that particular point. Thank you.
That would be good. Thank you. Very good. So are there any further questions through to the CIO in regards to his report? There are none. So then we carry on and we go to matters again for consideration, item B, and that is the background to the public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment, file number ZA6-2021 95 and 97 Point Street, PL 2021-57. That this report be received for discussion and that staff be directed to prepare a report for a future committee of the whole meeting to address any comments received at the public meeting. So do we have anything further to bring forward or to discuss on this matter? Councillor Sanema.
Thank you, Your Worship. A question directed to our director of planning. Just in regards to when we're doing planning, when items are brought forward, such as this, when there's an established, even, I know that we look at infilling of properties, but if there is an established single-family residential zoning in place, why do we consider or recommend changing it to a zoning of a higher density when we are meeting our higher density requirements at this time? And the change may not be in keeping with the neighborhood.
Madam Planner, please.
Thanks, Your Worship, and through to Councillor Sanama. I think potentially, with a zoning bylaw the town has in place, anyone can make an application to change it. And so that's as far as we've gone tonight with it. So, the applicant has made a request to town to consider changing the zoning bylaw. The subsequent reports would address some of the things that maybe you're alluding to, is why would we change it? I guess overall is we need to be able to amend documents over time. So that's why we have the ability to change it. Whether or not we should change it is, I think, your second part of your question, and we'll leave that to a future report.
Thank you.
Okay, further, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may comment, this is my neighborhood, as all of you know. That particular piece of property has a very steep incline, as been presented this evening. So it just really behooves me to try to understand a building of that nature on that property. And I think another thing that we must consider is Point Street in itself has become a through street. This street is extremely busy at all times. And I certainly agree with the hill. The hill is very much a deterrent. And at all times of the day, people speed up that hill way over speed limit. But anyway, those are my comments. I just would really encourage the people that are developing the property to rethink their stand and build 2 separate units with apartments in the basement. I think the community surrounding the property has certainly demonstrated that they would agree with that. Would be still an issue to build on that property, but I think it would be far better. Thank you.
Very good. Anybody have any other further comments, concerns, questions? Okay, there being none, then with that, we will let our Director of Planning and our Planning Department deal with what was brought forward, what was discussed, questions, concerns, and come back to Council with a further report at a later date.
Sorry, Your Worship, we do need a mover and a seconder.
Yes, I know. And so I have a mover and a seconder on this. Councillor Mayette and Councillor Cummings, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So we will move on to C, which is the Cultural Alliance Statement for National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And the motion is that Council approve the Cultural Alliance in the heart of Georgian Bay Statement for the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, and that each municipality and the Cultural Alliance will share this statement or portions thereof via social media on September 30th, 2021, and further that all parts of the statement may be used by any of or all of the 5 communities that comprise the Cultural Alliance as part of their statement in recognition of and honoring the victims of his residential and day school. And the statement was attached. So could I have a mover and a seconder on this? Deputy Mayor and Councillor Clue, all in favor? Thank you, that is carried. Moving on to D, Ojibwe Landing Ecological and Human Health Risk Assessment, Dog Park Remediation. The recommended action is that Council approve the additional funding required to complete the remediation work required for the Ojibwe Landing Risk Assessment Project as outlined within the staff report, and that the additional funding required to complete the project of $118,905.62 be funded by a combination of development charge and taxation funds as outlined within the staff report. I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder, and then we'll go to debate. So mover, Councillor Levy, seconder, Councillor Cummings. And now, are there any members of council who have questions, concerns with this item? There being none, all in favor? Thank you, that is carried. Moving on to E, the Community Building Fund Capital Stream RCS 2021-22, and that is that the recommended action that the town of Penetanguishene apply to the Community Building Fund Capital Stream through the Ontario Children Foundation for the replacement of the roof at the Penetanguishene Memorial Community Centre as outlined in the staff report. Any questions or concerns? Comments? Okay, a mover and a seconder. Councillor Cummings and Councillor Buddebaker, all in favor. And that is carried. Thank you. Moving on to F, which is awarding of abatement and demolition of facility at 51 Dunlop Street, RFT 2021-017. And the recommended action is that be it resolved that the abatement and demolition tender 2021-017 be awarded to either Tri-Phase Group Inc. or for a tender price of $985,846.50, or Budget Environmental Disposal Inc. for a price of $988,230, depending the outcome of the formal interviews. And that following informal interviews, delegated authority be provided to the Mayor and Chief Administrative Officer to ultimately award the project on behalf of council to either Tri-Phase Group Inc. or Budget Environmental Disposal Inc. Comments, concerns, questions? None. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor LaRose and Councillor Buddebaker, all in favor. And that is carried. Thank you. Moving on to presentation and consideration of report, Committee of the Whole report, August 11th, that the recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report related to the Recreation and Community Services section be approved. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Cummings and Deputy Mayor, all in favor? And that is carried. That the recommendations contained within Committee of the Whole report related to the Planning and Development Services section be approved. Mover, Councillor Levy, seconded by Councillor Buddebaker. Anyone wish to pull or concern? No, all in favor. That's carried. Thank you. That the recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report related to the Transportation and Environmental Services section be approved. Does anyone wish to pull or discuss any part of that? There being none, the mover and the seconder. Councillor Klug, Councillor LaRose, all in favor. And that is carried. Thank you. That the recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report related to the Finance and Corporate Services section be approved. Does anyone have any one that they'd like to pull or discuss? There being none, the mover and a seconder, Councillor Saint-Amand and Councillor Mayat, all in favor. And that is carried. Presentations and consideration of reports, special committees, there are none. Motions of which notice has been previously given, there are none. Notices of motion, we have none. And we move on to consideration of bylaws. And the bylaws are being, number one, a bylaw to authorize the execution of a loan from the Hydroelectric Commission Reserve Fund for funding required for the sewage treatment plant grit removal system. And the second one being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 2000-02 as amended of the Corporation of the Town of Penetanguishene, 39 Yeo Street. And that Council of the Town of Penetanguishene introduced the following bylaws: 2021-42 and 21-43, and that bylaws be read a first time and deemed to be read a second time and third time and carried. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Saint-Amand and Deputy Mayor, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We now arrive to question period from the media and the public. Are there any questions from the media or the public? I see none. Announcements and inquiries. Members of council have any announcements or inquiries? Seems not. Confirmation bylaw, that the confirmation bylaw 2021-44 be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Cummings and Councillor Saint-Amand, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And motion to adjourn. Councillor Cummings and Councillor Mayat, all in favor? Okay, and with that, members of council, we will take a 5-minute break before we carry on with our meeting committee of the whole. Members of council, I'm looking for. And Councilor Budbecker. So, okay, all present. And so with that, we will call to order our committee of the whole meeting of Wednesday, September the 8th. And again, with the calling of the committee of the whole meeting, welcome members of council, staff, and public that are joining us. And I will call the meeting to order by recommending action that the committee of the whole agenda for September 8th, 2021 be approved as presented. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Cummings and Councillor LaRose, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Again, if you have, so declare. If not, at the appropriate time. Carry on to item 4, which is presentations and delegations, all sections. And this evening we have a delegation from Gord and Keith Press. So Gord and Keith, if you're with us, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I'm Keith Press, and my brother Gordon Press is here in attendance as well. We're having some technical difficulties. Can you hear me?
We can hear you and we can see you.
Oh,
you can hear and see.
Perfect. That's a blessing. I'm going to make 2 assumptions. The matter that we're here tonight to discuss is a rezoning of a piece of property that my brother and I have joint ownership. I'm going to make the assumption that you have the letter dated August 20th from Andrea Betty asking that it be presented to council. And I'm also going to make the assumption that you know the said property without, or would you like me to give you details as to where it is?
It might be an idea, Keith, to give some clarification to members of council.
Okay. If you were to, well, the lot is designated part lot 30, but that's probably not going to clarify things. If you take Robert Street East and you get to the top of the hill where the lights are, you can turn left and go to James Keating School. But if you proceed probably another 300-400 yards on the left, there's a, we're going to call it a cul-de-sac, but it's not really a cul-de-sac. Anyway, there's a road in there, and that road is called Bylaw Drive. I hope I pronounce it right, even though I'm an owner. What we're asking the council is that they consider to rezone the piece of property. It's currently rezoned deferred, so that consideration for building is a possibility. We'd like it added to the capital as a capital project to the budget. We recently sold the piece of property, but because of and Andrea Betty might be able to help us with this to add some clarification. But there's no current plan that exists to continue with the road through to Le Caron. So our property basically is landlocked. So even though we sold the piece of property, the purchaser withdrew. So my brother and I are considering rezoning it and having eligibility to tap into the services that are at the road, so that the property is sellable or can be built on. Any questions, any clarifications needed?
Maybe not right at the present, Keith. I might just remind you and Gord, though, that your presentation is for a limit of 10 minutes, eh?
Yes. Oh, I'm fairly complete there. The only addition that I'll make is that there was an agreement in 1989 that I believe is still standing. And in that agreement, the agreement was between Steve Rubior and Paul Rubior, who would be, if I'm going to use his name, Gilly, the former mayor, who purchased the property off Art Stewart, who I believe may have been the warden at the time. That piece of property in that agreement, which I don't believe there is any amendment still since, so it's still standing, it indicates that the town intends to, in the future, open Part 3 as a public road and install new water services and sewer services along the said proposed road. And that's in 1989, and I do not believe there's been any movement on that matter since.
Okay. Now, Keith, are you and Gord, Are you working with our planner, Andrea, to make or see that changes can be made to suit your needs? Are you working with our planner?
Yes, we have met with Andrea on a couple occasions, and she's been very helpful. But it was her recommendation that we submit this letter to council so they could add it to the budget as a capital project if considered. I believe this may be the last meeting before that time runs out. Andrea, if you want to add anything to anything I'm missing to help with clarification, it's appreciated.
Well, Andrea, maybe you could give council a bit of clarification on this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship, and I'll try and do my best. I apologize, I don't have a map available to share with you, but the Presses property is at the very end of the open section of Beaulieu Drive. And so there's an extension of Beaulieu eastward to Le Caron that's not an open municipal road. So there's no road there, there's no services, and the surrounding properties sort of reflect that. So the Presses property is the first one in on that unopened road allowance, and it's in a zone that doesn't permit any development to happen until it's rezoned. And in discussions with them, we've suggested that, we need to look at how that lot will be serviced from both a road and infrastructure perspective, and said that at this point in time, the town has no intentions on our 10-year capital budget of building that road. And the obligation would then be on the neighbors to get together or to propose development otherwise. So this is one of the options that they were given on how they could proceed with their property and what was best advice for them that we could offer. And they've come to council just to bring it to your attention.
Okay, thank you. Members of council, do there are any questions? Councillor Sainama.
Just one question, and probably directed more to Andrea. Like how many lots is there along, if that road allowance was opened up? Is there any kind of a plan of subdivision or anything there, or what's the lot density?
Through you, Mayor LaRue, to Councillor Sainama. So there are just 2 vacant lots on the north side of Beaulieu. That the rest of the extension of Beaulieu as it goes to Le Caron, those properties have frontage on either Burke or Robert Street East. So they're not necessarily landlocked like these 2 properties, the Presses one and their neighbor just to the east of them. Those 2 lots are the only ones that are landlocked for access and servicing, and also don't have a zoning that's favorable for development.
Thank you.
Okay, further questions, members of the council? No, so I think with that, gentlemen, we would have to leave it that you work with our planner to see where it can go.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. That's sort of what we've been doing. It's just that I think Andrea summed it up quite clearly that it's landlocked. So it's very difficult for us to sell the property. I mean, if there's never any intentions of putting that road through, the property value, we're just going to be stuck with a piece of property that we can't sell or build on. I'm hoping that some consideration at some point is going to be made to put that through so that it makes the property viable for my brother and I, or otherwise, as you mentioned it's landlocked.
And Your Worship, even if the town could even consider rezoning it from deferred to residential, and if they don't ever intend on putting that road through, allow us to at least tap into the existing services and allow the building of either maybe multiple family residence, duplex, triplex, which from what I understand is in the official plan, which would be more beneficial to the town for revenue, as opposed to a single dwelling, and in line with the province encouraging housing. And I think my battery's dying on me here, but I'm sorry. Yes?
That's fine. Councillor Levy, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that completing that subdivision that was virtually stalled for the last 30 years, and we did start selling off the town-owned land and servicing it, and I just think that there are other opportunities in that subdivision for completing the building up of that subdivision. And I would like to look at that vis-a-vis the Community Development Fund, which was initially brought in by myself years ago to with the goal of developing the rest of that subdivision. So I just want to leave that out there, that I find this a viable opportunity to, I'm not saying we pay and throw in the services right away, but we continue to look at completing that subdivision that was stalled for 30 years. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I think that we gentlemen would leave this now with our planner to look into it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks. Okay, we move on to the council information package, and the council information package of August 20th, 21 and September 8th, 2021. And that the council information package dated both dates 2021 and September 8, 21 haven't been given due consideration, be received for information. Does anyone wish to pull anything from these, from the SIP? There being none, a mover and a seconder. Councillor Mayette, Councillor Rose, all in favor. Now that is carried, thank you. Moves us on to Section 8, Transportation and Environmental Services, and I will pass it on to Councillor Klug.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have a couple items on the consent agenda tonight. The recommended action is that the following consent agenda items, having been given due consideration, be received for information. There's a memo to council regarding 12 Burns Crescent update, and the DWQMS Management Review Meeting minutes of December 7th, 2020. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Rose and Councillor Cummings, are there any concerns or questions about these items? Seeing none, all in favor? Those are passed, thank you. Moving to matters for consideration, the first item is the proposed 5-year preventative road maintenance plan, report RDS-2021-18. The recommended action is that the proposed 5-year preventative road maintenance plan be approved in principle, and that the proposed funding increases to the plan be brought forward for council approval during the 2022 budget process. Can we have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Rose and Councillor Mayette. Any comments, questions? Your Worship, go ahead.
Through to Brian, to our Director of Public Works, actually, Madam Chair, if you will. I see in the 5-year plan, we give the details of what we're proposing in far as asphalting each year for the next 5 years. And the only thing, I have no problems or issues with what's been given or reported. The only thing I ask is that perhaps, Mr. Director, you could look at a small portion of the secondary Beck Boulevard Road, not Beck Boulevard per se itself, the inner road on the west side, the water side, just a small section at the north end. It's in very bad shape, and I think that we should try to fit it in somewhere in the next year or two. I'll leave it at that.
We'll take that comment then. I think our directors noted that one. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Vadebonker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought this was a really good report. It was nice to see some additional dollars being allocated or proposed to be allocated, subject to budget approval, for road maintenance. I had a question with respect to the hot mix asphalt treatment. Perhaps our director can speak to this. Mr. Director, when this treatment is applied, is there a removal of the surface through a grinding and then the asphalt goes on top of that? I was trying to, when I read the report, it talks about the hot mix asphalt treatment, but it didn't go into detail, so I couldn't really understand what the process is. Thank you.
Go ahead, Brian. Thanks.
Thank you. Through Madam Chair to Councillor Vadabancourt. It's really site specific, depending on the road section that we're looking at re-asphalting. Some road sections we'll do a mill, which will be milling off the top course of the asphalt, and then we'll haul the grindings back to the public works yard, and we use that in shouldering. In other instances, we'll actually recycle or pulverize the existing asphalt into the road base, and using that old asphalt to strengthen the old base, putting a layer of granular A on top, packing it, and then placing 2 to 3 inches of asphalt on top. So it's really site specific based on the road, but those are typically the 2 rehabilitation treatments that we look at.
Thank you. As I said, great report.
Thank you for those comments. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? It is carried. Thank you so much. The next item is the awarding of contract administration and inspection for 51 Dunlop Street facility abatement and demolition, ENG 2021-10. The motion is, be it resolved that the abatement and demolition review services, task 1, and the contract administration services, task 2, be awarded to EXP Engineering Services for the abatement and demolition of 51 Dunlop Street, and that the formal purchasing process be waived to allow for single source purchasing as indicated in section 21 of the Procurement Policy Bylaw 2018-12. Can we have a mover and a seconder, please, for this item? Councillor Rose and Councillor Levy. Any questions or comments? I see none. All in favor? Thank you so much. That has passed. Carrying on to our referrals to upcoming agenda and staff. The motion is that the Transportation and Environmental Services section endorse the following additional and existing referrals to upcoming agendas and staff. We have 2 items on here. Is still remaining 2022 budget request for road work at Robert Street East and Dufferin, and the stormwater management best practices and engineering standards. Are there any comments or additions, changes? Given the way this meeting started, I thought perhaps we could add a memo from staff or Director of Public Works to bring back some information about Bolio Drive and when that potentially shows up in our capital plan to complete the road, just to satisfy our own interest in completing that area. So that was one addition I made note of. Obviously the zoning aspect is at the applicant's, that's their responsibility, but the road itself, we don't actually know when we're planning to complete that. It's not in our 10-year plan. Any comments? Councillor Vadabancourt?
Thank you, Councillor Clue. I understand where you're going with referral for Beaulieu, and I understand the logic behind it, but there may be other options, and that might be helpful for us to understand what those options are. The Director of Planning did make reference to local improvement, which is a tool under legislation where the owners get together, and if the 51% of them agree to undertake the work, that certainly there's a role for the town, and the road can be pushed through, but it's the cost is borne by those that benefit. So that's another option, and certainly it would get the road put through. So may I suggest that perhaps your referral item be a little expanded just to include some options that council may consider if it wants to support the road being put through. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments. Councillor Cummings, go ahead.
Thank you. This referral item, would this not be under planning and not transportation?
It definitely overlaps. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would suggest we put this under planning referral.
That's fair. Councillor Levy.
I'll bring it up when we get to planning. Thank you. If I don't, remind me, please.
Okay. Great, thank you so much. So we'll leave the 2 items on there. We just need a mover and seconder, please. Councillor LaRose and Councillor Cummings for those 2 items. All in favor? Great, thank you. That is carried. And we move on to question period from media and public. Are there any questions this evening? I don't see any, so I will turn it back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Clue. We will now move on to section B, Recreation and Community Services, and I will pass it to Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll make this really short tonight. We have nothing on our consent agenda. We have nothing under matters for consideration, and we have the referrals to upcoming agendas. The referral is that the recommendation or Recreation and Community Services section endorse the following additional and existing referral to the upcoming agendas for staff. The one is still outstanding, so that will come up after we've got a report probably next month or the month after from our Recreation. Are there any others that we are looking at? Councillor Vadavancourt.
Thank you. As we talked about in the council meeting with respect to the arena and how it will be functioning moving forward under the regulations imposed by the province. In response to a question, the director indicated that the maximum capacity permitted for I guess people watching the games, spectators, would be 70, if I heard her correctly, 70. So the legislation permits up to 50% of the capacity of the facility to be used, and the spectator capacity of our facility is 384, according to the Monteith report. So my referral would be to staff to look at options to move the spectator capacity up to closer to where that 50% and still maintain the parameters outlined by the province, and how we can do that. I think also, Mr. Chair, she mentioned something about number of players per dressing room. I think she said 7. I can't remember specifically, but I don't know how that would work with the team. Say if you've had 16 players, I guess you would occupy 2 dressing rooms. 2 dressing rooms per team. But for say a junior C team, that might be a little bit more. So I'd like to understand how that all is going to work within the parameters of the existing provincial regulations, with a view to try to make it as user-friendly as possible, try to maximize the ability of our youth and our active people in the community to use that facility in a safe manner.
I'm not sure if the clerk got all that information, what the deliverables will be. Madam Clerk, did you get the information that Councillor Vancouver?
I certainly did, but he would require obviously a seconder to add that to the referral items list, but I did capture all of those points.
Okay, thank you. Then Councillor Vadavancourt has made the motion, and I need a seconder, Councillor Sanama. So we will add that. I'll have a question from Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment. At our section meeting this week, I thought that our director said that a report would be coming forward at our next meeting. Just would not a lot of that information be in that report? Just asking for clarification.
All right, I'm going to refer to the director. Is she here? Oh, there she is.
Hi, thank you. Sorry. Some people struggle with the mute button. I struggle with the stop video button. Thank you for the question. The comment, Madam Deputy Mayor, is with respect to the safety plan. for the arena operations, which would be coming forward to the control group. Not a report to council.
Right. Okay. All right. So that being said, we have that added. I need a vote first of all to put it on the agenda for referrals. So all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And the other agenda item for the referrals, I need a motion to keep that one on, the outsourcing. Motion, Councillor Mayette, the second, Councillor Sanama. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And questions from the media and the public? I don't see any. Back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. Moving on to Section 8, Planning and Community Development Services, and I will pass it on to Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll go into the consent agenda, and we have the animal control communications, Huron Animal Reports, monthly comparative, municipal bylaw report, and moment of council business recovery task force meeting. Does anyone want any of these pulled? Seeing none, do I have a mover? Councillor Sanama, seconded by Councillor Mayette. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Matters for consideration, increasing building fees. We've had some discussion on this already. The staff recommended action that the draft bylaw to staff report planning 2021-58 be presented to council for adoption regarding proposed changes to Schedule C to bylaw 2018-35. As always, not always, but in recent years, we've tried to align with Midland Council, which makes sense to everybody on many levels. So do I have a mover? Councillor Vadavancourt, did I see? Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Clue. Any discussion on that? Questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Next up, we have revised draft plan of subdivision application, Pen Sub 2021-01, 23 Robert Street East. Recommended action that this report be received for discussion and that staff be directed to give notice on the revised application and request written comments. And further, that the application for a revised draft plan of subdivision dated August 29, 2021, respecting 123 Robert East, be approved in principle, and that further the application for a zoning bylaw amendment respecting 123 Robert East be approved in principle. And finally, that staff be directed to bring forward draft plan conditions of subdivision approved and a draft zoning bylaw amendment for consideration at a future committee of the whole. And we have had much discussion on this. There is a revised plan, and I would ask at this point that our director, Andrea Betty, briefly address this and council can discuss. Andrea?
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Levy. So in response to public comments, the developer and their agent, Celeste Phillips, who's on the line tonight and can answer any questions council may have, took all the feedback they've received from council at the August 11th meeting and revised the application significantly. So what they've proposed now is a change in the number of units from 33 down to 27. And the units are now changed from townhouses to semi-detached units in the freehold blocks, those blocks on Burke Street, and there's one block on Robert Street East, and continue to maintain the rental townhouse block at the corner of Le Caron and Robert Street East. Other changes that are reflective of the zoning bylaw, they've looked at increasing the front yard setbacks of the buildings to help with parking. And the staff report, I think, identifies some other changes to the zoning bylaw that were requirements previously noted about rear yard setbacks and setbacks from Robert Street East. So the application has been revised, and they're moving forward and asking council to endorse this in principle so that we can continue working on finalizing the bylaw and the draft plan conditions. I would note one of the recommendations is for further notice. As you've stated, this was a very hot topic, I guess, to say, in the town. And so we can consider giving further notice to the public and providing them a time frame to provide any more comments on this revision, noting that it is coming forward for approval in future should council decide that.
So Andrea, just by way of clarification, if we vote in favor of this motion tonight, we are in no way giving the green light to this development going forward. We are just giving you, the town, permission to continue to work with the developer, correct?
Yeah, it's enough assurance to the developer that they're on the right track, I guess, as they've put together an application and they tried to respond to the public, and now they've tried to respond again. So this is something that they feel is important so that they can, what direction to continue proceeding on. But the final decision still will be at a council meeting in the future. So it's just to support them moving forward and doing some of the work that's needed to bring this type of development forward.
Thank you for that clarification. I would ask members of council for their questions, if any. And Councillor Cummings, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is regarding stormwater management. The original plan, I'm not sure there's been changes or there has been changes for the stormwater management plan. Are we going back to the original one? Because according to this letter from Celeste Phillips, it doesn't mention whether we're going to stick with the original plan or whether we're going to go with what was discussed with the planning department and the transportation department. So,
Madam Planner? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you very much, and I'll do my best to answer Councillor Cummings' question, although I may have to defer to Brian or Celeste. But my understanding is that the site itself is within the catchment of the JT Payette Park, and so that when they do the detailed engineering of it, that will give some more information about how stormwater will be managed. So there's probably going to be a combination, but that is something that's a detailed engineering design for it. I probably butchered that one, so I'll probably leave it to Brian if you've got any other comments on stormwater.
Not saying you butchered it, but I would ask that Brian step in.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Cummings. Andrea, explanation was correct. As of right now, we've only received one submission as part of the planning supporting documents for the development, and we've provided our comments and a supplemental information. We've provided information related to the catchment area, as Andrea has said, stating that the development area is within the catchment area of the JT Payette Park. But what remains is the detailed design. So that's kind of where the details of the stormwater management on site will be addressed, as far as control and quality, and whether or not additional controls, as outlined in their original submission, will be necessary. As of right now, we haven't seen that subsequent submission, and once the development is finalized and the lot fabric and the nature of the development is nailed down, they'll be able to get into the detailed design phase of the project and determine what controls are required on site. Because before the stormwater gets to the JT Payette Park, they have to demonstrate to the town and our engineering consultant that the infrastructure on Robert East and downstream is capable of handling those flows. So if it isn't, then they need to provide additional controls on site as they indicated in their initial submission. And as of right now, we haven't seen that yet. So once we do see that, that's what we'll be looking for.
Thank you very much, Brian. And I'm just going to take a moment here to remind both directors that the stormwater is a huge concern for this area. It's probably the biggest concern. And that I know many of us on council are looking for some concrete answers and some guarantees that the continued flooding due to runoff in this area, not this subdivision yet, because it's not built, but we need some pretty firm guarantees. That I will leave it at that. And I think Councillor Cummings had his card up. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to state the same thing. I think the engineering of the stormwater management, I've seen what's happening in this area that's going into JT Payette. I know what's happening with just a normal rain event. Over the last 40 years, we've had some pretty severe rain events and some pretty bad flooding in that area. And to add more to that, I think is kind of ridiculous to think that we can depend on 30 or 40-year-old engineering reports when we've had so many different storm events and climate change. So I think it's our due diligence to make sure that that is well managed, even just for the stormwater management end of it.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. I can't wait to see the videos from today's flash flood. I'm sure someone has them. Any further questions on this issue? Councillor Vadavon-Court, did you have, oh, sorry. I see other cards up. Councillor Clue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to actually acknowledge that it was a respectable revision from the applicant. I think they listened to the concerns of the neighborhood. Obviously, there are still concerns going forward, as you mentioned, with respect to stormwater, but I was pleased to see the fairly substantial changes to the development, given the concerns that were brought up at the previous meetings. And I do look forward to some notice being provided to the neighboring residents in terms of this coming back to us, that this isn't a done deal and that they have further opportunity to provide comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clue. Who was it? Councillor LaRose, did you have your card up?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
And Councillor Vadavon-Court.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was also very concerned about the stormwater, but there is a revision and we'll get through into that. I'm just a little leery on us giving them sort of the okay that this is all right. Because it was a substantial change for the property, I'm just wondering whether we will be having another public meeting for the people up there, or are we not?
I would ask the planner to answer that, please.
Thank you very much. Through you to Councillor LaRose. No, the intention was not to have another statutory public meeting. That's the element of the staff report that says we'll give notice and ask for comments back from the public. Obviously, the public can attend council meetings and make other further comments to council if they wish at that point in time. But we were hoping to have comments back in order to prepare a final report to council with this the new concept. So I think the staff report spoke to that a little bit about giving notice and that requirement. And so that was our intention, is to do that so that the public could participate further.
Thank you, Madam Planner. That's standard practice with any planning proposal. And then we have Councillor Vadavon-Court.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to make a couple of comments. Like Councillor Clue, I was pleased to see the changes that the developer made to the plan based on the comments that were received at the public meeting, reducing the number of units from 33 to 27. I thought it was a really good first step in terms of acknowledging some of the concerns that were heard in the public meeting. I mentioned this at our section meeting earlier this week with respect to the proposed plan that's before us now, is that really struggle because I want to support the changes that the developer has made, but I don't know if it's gone far enough. I certainly support the internal component, the internal road and the area highlighted in the deeper shade of yellow, and certainly the semi-detached that's fronting on Robert Street. I struggle a bit with the semi-detached units, the 7 semi-detached units on Burke. I'd like to see a little bit more of a setback between the units. That may necessitate eliminating 1 semi-detached. So instead of 14 units there'd be 6, resulting in 12 units. And I'm still struggling with that. As I said, I haven't made up my mind, but I certainly, from the standpoint in terms of being able to support it, I would support it, I guess, in a stronger vein if there were 2 less units fronting on Burke and a little bit more of a setback between the individual units. But as I said, I want to commend the developer and his planner on listening to the comments from the public and council from the last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vadamancourt. Anyone else weighing in at this moment? We will have other opportunities to discuss this. Oh, Councillor Sanamon.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just want to weigh in as well that it was really good to see that the developer did listen to some of the concerns. The only thing that I did notice is that in the earlier plan, they had said that it would be kind of a maximum of two stories, and yet they certainly made reference in the letter to say that that they weren't going to leave that that element in there, and that I guess it could go up to 3 stories on the semi-detached units. And I was just curious if the developer's representative wants to make any comments in that regard, what what they were thinking.
I would ask Celeste Phillips to respond. You there, Celeste?
I am. Thank you, Councillor Levy. To you, Councillor Saint-Amand. So I guess a couple of things that I would like to say. First of all, this entire area is an area where 3 stories are permitted. So any development that takes place in the vicinity is allowed 3 stories. So our thinking was with the townhouses, we would limit it to 2 stories because that was something that we had talked about. With the reduction in the number of units, 6 units being taken away, there's some thought that perhaps there needs to be allowance for 3 stories. I'm not sure absolutely whether that will be required, but we didn't commit to limiting it to 2 stories as we did in the presentation last time. And then with respect to stormwater management, I just wanted to reiterate that the development, post-development flows from this property have to match the pre-development flows. And you'll see on the plan that we've increased the size of the infiltration area to assist with stormwater management.
Thank you, Celeste. Councillor LaRose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say I'm not comfortable with this. Are we approving how many units? Where are they going to go? To give approval in principle sort of gives them the leeway that we're leaning towards doing this. We don't know if they're 2-story. We don't know if they're 3-story. We don't know the answer about the stormwater. I'm just not comfortable at this point. We haven't heard any comments. We haven't had any other stuff. Nobody seems to really know what's going on. So I don't understand the hurry. I'd rather wait and see what people say.
Councillor LaRose, I don't believe this is the same thing as approval in principle. I don't believe that term.
That's what the recommendation says, approval in principle.
Okay, I stand corrected. I will just double check with Andrea again that we'll have ample opportunity to vote against this or change it? Andrea, we need assurances here.
Yeah, thanks very much. So, hang on. So it is, the application that is before council was for the previous concept. So that was the one that council has had the public meeting on and discussed. Them revising this design is a lesser development. And so approval in principle at least gives them some assurance that that they're on the right path, I guess. And so, you know, we're in a position where the decision times for applications, you know, we're at our time period where, you know, they have an ability to appeal a non-decision by the town at this point in time. And so that's where we wanted to give them enough assurance that they're on the right path and still have council to participate in the process by providing comments and speaking to council before a final decision is made. And the next meeting would be a committee of the whole meeting before council decision. So there's two actual events before a decision would be made on this by council. And I think that hopefully is ample opportunity to get feedback from the public and refine this if necessary to council's satisfaction. And as always, with any application, there's always the appeal process if people are still not happy.
Andrea, I think what we want to know is if we're not happy with the drainage issues, can we pull the plug? Pun intended.
Absolutely. This is just a decision to move them ahead and move the bar further down the road so they know where they're going with this development.
Okay.
Council can change your mind at the next meeting or at a final decision by council.
Okay, I think Celeste has probably heard enough about our concerns tonight. And if we're not committing, I certainly would encourage further discussion between the town and the planner and the property owner. But I sure as heck don't want to be committed to this until I feel comfortable that we're not flooding the downstream properties out any more than they're already flooded out every time it rains. You got that, didn't you, Celeste?
I did, Councillor Levy, and I just wanted to mention if committee is so inclined and you have concerns about the height, for example, you might want to give approval in principle subject to a maximum height of 2 stories, if that's something that is a deal breaker for you. I think from my perspective and that of my client, it's been almost a year, I think, since we applied. So we need to know one way or the other whether we go back to the previous plan, which is the townhouse plan, or we carry forward with this plan and move forward with the detailed designing. And until we have an idea of what council is going to accept, we can't get into the detailed design of the stormwater management.
Well, Celeste, speaking for myself, the 3-story height is within the boundaries of the official plan, so I have no concerns there. My big concern, other people have small concerns, but the big concern is storm management. So I'll leave that with you, and with that, I will ask council if perhaps they're ready to vote. Did we get a mover and a seconder for this, Stacy? Oh, sorry, George wants to speak. Councillor Vadaboncourt, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Councillor. I think Celeste has made an excellent suggestion with respect to adding subject to, because I think that members of council, whether it be yourself that's mentioned stormwater, others have mentioned the height. There's been a couple of other suggestions. That might be the way to go, is that after that word principle, subject to stormwater concerns, height concerns, the other concerns, Madam Chair, being resolved to the satisfaction of council. You know, I think that lays it out very clearly, and I think achieves what everybody is looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vadaboncourt. I think that's a very, very wise suggestion. And Madam Clerk, I'm sure will clerky this up for us and get back to us. In the meantime, Councillor Rose wants to add to that. You're on mute, Dan. There you go.
All right, there we go. Yeah, no, I'm just wondering, are we dealing with this tonight? I can't believe we're trying to make a decision whether it's going to be 2-story, 3-story, 26 units, 27 units. The developer has been going through the motions. Their representative has seen us, they've heard us. Why don't they just go and bring forth a plan that they would like us to approve or not approve, just like every other one? I don't understand what the hurry is in principle. Just give us something that they know basically what we want. They know what the town wants. Why don't they just go and do their homework? Tell us where that stormwater is going. Don't tell us that it's going to be managed. Why are we dealing with this tonight? Let's just wait for them to do their plan and then we'll deal with it.
Dan, I think that is what Councillor Vadavancourt's recommendation is, and if we can get a motion to that effect, it will deal with those. We're not going to approve it in principle. We're going to move it forward based on looking at all the concerns that were mentioned here tonight. And I think that's just the right approach. Or we can just, I don't know. To me, that's the correct alternative. And I think Councillor Vadavancourt is on the right track with that. But that's just me. So any other comments before I call for the vote? Great, seeing none. Oh, I'm going to ask Stacy to read the amended, hopefully amended motion. Stace, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Levy.
It's Levy.
It's Levy, I know that. I'm just so rattled because I'm certainly not going to be able to bring forward a suggested amended motion to this. And that is because I don't think we have anyone who said specifically what, other than what Councillor Vadavancourt mentioned, what it is that you're directing the substantial, I forget what the wording was, but they were still, I did write down what he said, but it said subject to stormwater concerns, height concerns, etc. And I think what the intention was with adding that subject to was to actually identify what those would be. So like Celeste said, 2 stories or specific things.
Councillor Vadavancourt, could you clarify that, please? Go ahead, Councillor Vadavancourt.
Thank you. I was listening to the comments made by my fellow members of council and tried to summarize the 2 highlights. There may be others, but the key for me was that subject to the stormwater management, the height, and whatever being addressed to the satisfaction of council. So unless council is satisfied, then approval doesn't exist. So I hear what Councillor Rose is saying, and yeah, there are a lot of unanswered questions, but I think if we're able to summarize a bit in that statement and then put to the satisfaction of council, then I think we've left it, and the developer and our planning staff have some direction in terms of the issues that they need to go back and resolve. I only picked out 2. There may have been others that were mentioned, Madam Chair. So hopefully that helps.
I think, Councillor Vadavancourt, I think the sticking point is our clerk can't write a motion that says whatever.
No, it's okay, Councillor Levy. I do have the wording that Councillor Vadavancourt has said, and if he's specifically asking to make that amendment to the motion, I'm happy to read that as part of it. I thought his suggestion was maybe that members of council provide that specific direction.
Okay, so I'm going to give this a shot anyway to get us moving along here. Madam Clerk, who moved and seconded this?
We don't have a mover or a seconder for the motion at all. And I don't know that the full motion has even been read as yet.
So read it.
And are we reading it with the proposed amendment from Councillor Vatabancourt?
Absolutely.
All right, one moment. All right, so that this report be received for discussion and that staff be directed to give notice of the revised applications and request written comments. And further that the application for revised draft plan of subdivision dated August 29th, 2021, file number pen sub 2021-01 respecting 123 Robert Street East be approved in principle. And I think that's where, sorry, I just need some direction on if that is where that friendly amendment goes or in the next.
I think it's there. I think it's there.
Okay. Subject to stormwater concerns, height concerns being resolved to the satisfaction of council, and that further that the application for a zoning bylaw amendment file number ZA3/2021 respecting 123 Robert Street East be approved in principle. And finally, that staff be directed to bring forward draft plan conditions of subdivision approval and draft zoning bylaw amendment for consideration at a future committee of the whole meeting.
So it comes back to committee of the whole. Good job. Thank you very much. I think that should give everyone a reasonable comfort level. And now we need a mover and a seconder for that particular one. We've got Councillor Cummings and Deputy Mayor. And I will call for the vote now since we've had ample decision.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Sorry.
I do need a seconder and for Councillor Vatabancourt's amended motion.
Hold on, we had Councillor Cummings, Deputy Mayor. Pick one.
Oh, I will.
Deputy Mayor.
And that's for the amended motion. And then I need a mover and a seconder for the motion as amended.
That was Councillor Cummings, I believe. Shake your head, Brian.
Okay.
And the Deputy Mayor. And now Councillor Cummings wants to speak. Of course you do.
Just clarification. This original motion, we never had a motion to put it on the floor. So this is really not an amended motion. This is the motion we're putting forward. Is it not?
That's what I thought.
Is it not, Madam Clerk?
Come on, admit it.
Yes, this has been, sorry, a little abnormal for the way we've handled things. So yes, we're just going based on what we normally do, which is move and second the motion, but you're absolutely right. This motion was amended before it was read, and I will make note of that accordingly.
Thank
you.
You.
Now we are voting on the motion that Stacy read that includes the bringing it back to the satisfaction of council regarding height and regarding stormwater management. Everybody on the same page here? Okay, why don't we just vote on this? We've got the mover, we've got the seconder. We know what the motion is. All those in favor? And that looks like it has carried. I thank you very much, everyone, for your patience. We will get another kick at this. I'm very confident about that. Oh, deep breath, yoga breathing. Okay. Sorry, I've lost my small screen. Oh, there we go. Back again. We're on to Fuller Avenue. Referral report, recommended action that council of the town of Penetanguishene pass a bylaw to dedicate the 1 foot reserve legally described as blocks 109 and 110 on registered plan of subdivision 51M 543 as part of the Mercer Crescent. We had a discussion about this last meeting, and there's a very odd little 1 foot reserve on this property that otherwise is good to go for development. And if everyone recalls that, fine and dandy. If you have any questions, you can talk to Andrea. Do I have a mover? Councillor Saint-Amant, seconder. Councillor Vadavon-Cour. Any questions on this that we had full discussion on last meeting? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. I think we're almost to the end of our agenda. My phone keeps, never mind. Okay, we're up to referrals. Planning and Community Development Services endorses the following additional and existing referrals to the upcoming agendas and staff. And we've got the Burns Crescent bylaw concerns that we're making some movement on. Huroney Animal Control Communications, Community Development Fund, and 1056 Buller Avenue. Anything anyone wants removed, discussed, or anything added? Councillor Clue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just getting feedback, sorry. The Huroney Animal Control, we've dealt with that tonight on the consent agenda.
Sorry, so we can remove that? Okay. Mayor LaRue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to add to the referrals, the short-term rentals.
I think it's about time.
We had some discussion on this a while back and it didn't go anywhere, but I can assure you that in this last 2 weeks, I have so many complaints about some of these rentals. So I would like to see it back on the referrals.
Yeah, things have heated up. We're going to have a fulsome discussion on short-term rentals and what we would like to see as our parameters. So, Madam Clerk, could you help me out here? The last issue has kind of worn me out. I'm looking for direction on what the protocol is here and procedure for eliminating the one and adding the other.
Certainly, no problem. I think the one that Councillor Klug is looking for is a standard removal. It's something that's been completed, so that's fine. Mayor LaRue adding that item, he does need a seconder, and we do need just some more clarification on key deliverables, please.
Okay, who would like to second the mayor's? Oh, I guess Mayor LaRue, perhaps you should explain what you're looking for before I ask for a seconder.
Well, it's certainly, I'm looking at getting a staff involved and then reporting back, making some recommendations to council, doing some research with other municipalities as to the process of handling of short-term rentals, because we certainly have a problem or an issue with it going on right now in single-family areas. So that's the issue, and that's where I'd like to see staff. Now, giving a queue time, I think it's just a matter of letting staff decide on that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would add that it would be absolutely crucial to have this ready by spring. And so we're fully, we have
Madam Chair, I agree with you, and that's a point that I wanted to bring up that I was remiss on, is that I would certainly like to see something brought up and dealt with before the summer of next year.
So it can't come back to us in the spring, because by the time we enforce anything, if we plan to enforce it, it will be summer already. So we're looking late winter so that we can, if we're going to do anything, of course. So Stacy, what we're looking for is a report on recommendations from staff on short-term rentals, any potential limiting, licensing, etc. We'll throw in the big etc. there. I see our CAO has jumped in here, and I'm perhaps thinking you might want to add to this. Jeff?
Thanks, Councillor Levy. What I was going to suggest in terms of the key deliverable is just with respect to providing some regulatory options and licensing options with respect to short-term rentals. From a timing perspective, I think what staff's plan is, should council concur, is that we could fairly easily resurrect this conversation through the zoning bylaw in the coming months, and then ultimately report back through council through that process. The timing is quite opportunistic, to be candid, just given that we are getting back in the thick and thin with our zoning bylaw. So I just wanted to offer those two points with respect to the conversation.
Thank you, Jeff. I like your wording so much better than mine. I do feel it's a separate conversation, and simply because it will be a lengthy conversation and a complex conversation. So staff can get back to us fairly soon about where they want to see us go, and we can decide at that point how we approach it. Councillor Vato-Encore, did I see? Yes, I did. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've just, you asked to be reminded of a matter, and I'm just reminding you.
Oh, thank you so much. And you're reminding me that we're going to add to the agenda what Councillor Clue wanted, and I've forgotten it. Go ahead, remind. A little more detail.
Will do.
Oh, yes. So we're going to add to the referral the potential for servicing the remaining lots. Is that right, Jess?
Sorry to interrupt, Madam Chair. We do need to just go back to Mayor LaRue's addition. We did get clarification on the key deliverables, and I think the CAO's addition is definitely helpful to clarify that. But we do need a seconder as well.
Councillor Clue is seconding that. Councillor Clue, would you like to address the below situation and what the deliverables would be and the queue there?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry. Bolligo Drive, we're looking for the future development of that road in terms of lifting the zoning matter, which is a deferred development zone, I believe, and in concert with the Director of Public Works, how and when the completion of that road comes up in our capital plan.
Thank you, Councillor Clue. Madam Clerk, can you add that in for us?
I believe that's enough information, but I'll ask the Director of Planning or the Director of Public Works to speak up if they don't have enough clarity on the key deliverables. But then we also, again, need a seconder for that.
Of course we do. Okay, I see people who are not the directors waving their, oh, Brian, what, I'm sorry, Councillor Cummings, what are you yesing to? Oh, you're seconding it. Good heavens. Okay. So any comments, Director Betty or Director of Public Works? No comments? Okay, we're adding that. All in favor? Perfect. My work here is done. Oh, questions, media, public? Nope. Okay, handing it back to Mr. Mayor. Phew.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Levy, and we will on to section 9, which is finance and corporate services, and I pass it to Councillor Sandema.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Under finance and corporate services, under our consent agenda, the recommended action is that the following consent agenda items have been given due consideration be received for information. It's follow-up regarding the annual conference 2021, the ministry delegations, CAO report 2021-14, I would ask for a mover and a seconder, and then possibly, thank you, Councillor Mayotte would be a mover, a seconder, Councillor LaRose. And Mayor LaRue, did you want to comment on those items? Oh, you just muted yourself.
Yes, yeah. Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Basically, I would like to comment on the one that we've had in regards to policing costs and a meeting that we had with Solicitor General. I have to say that I was not extremely pleased at all with the outcome of that meeting. And again, I felt that the allotment of 10 minutes was much too short to be discussing this issue and bringing it to some kind of fruition or conclusion. And so I have to say that I think we're going to be looking around along with the CAO and with the blessing of council that we're going to go further and asking again our MPP, Councillor Dunlop, or I mean Minister Dunlop, to set up a proper appointment with a face-to-face with the Solicitor General and her department to bring this thing to a conclusion, and that we're not pleased and we're not happy with what has been taken place or has taken place. So, and that was the one issue. The others were kind of, you know, I think maybe I could let the CAO make points on the other three that we had. My main concern was the one that we had in vis-a-vis policing at CNCC.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. CAO, did you want to make any comments in regards to the heads and beds? Just a quick.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I would just comment that, you know, this is, you know, essentially all four of the delegations are very much in line with Council's strategic plan, but certainly there's a specific point in our strategic plan around continuing to lobby the province with respect to fair treatment of provincial funding as it relates to the payment in lieu of taxes program, and in particular the heads and beds. You know, we certainly articulated as best as we can with Mayor LaRue's leadership the municipality's position with respect to the heads and beds program, and really feeling that it's far from being equitable and quite frankly fair. I think we were optimistic that we might get a bit of a commitment from the parliamentary assistant that, you know, there might be some timing that they could identify when this might be reviewed with the minister. Unfortunately, we didn't get any commitment of that regard, other than kind of a broad commitment that, you know, the ministry would continue to provide the municipality with appropriate resources. So I would suggest that, you know, we will continue forging ahead in addition to the CNCC policing one, also this Ministry of Finance one. My suggestion would be that, you know, with Mayor LaRue's and Council's blessing, that we articulate both of these concerns. I think these are probably the top two, if I had to guess, of the four delegations, that we articulate these top two concerns with Minister Dunlop and our local MPP Dunlop to get some assistance in pushing these forward with the particular ministries, being the Minister of Finance and the Solicitor General.
Thank you very much, Mr. CAO. Councillor Clue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to echo what Mayor LaRue said. I think it was quite disappointing just having read the follow-up reports. I did want to commend staff. I know how much work it is to put together these white papers, and I think they're excellent. So thank you for that. I know it was a lot of work, and we continue kind of hitting our heads against the wall on a lot of these items, and I'm ready to make noise when we need to. So standing by.
Thank you very much. And as I'm in agreement. I was going to make that comment. The reports were very succinct, very full of information, and they did refer back to the things that we need to follow up on, which is greatly appreciated. So can we call for the vote? Sorry, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Sandoval. Yeah, I think that I think we should definitely call for the vote right now, so that we can finish this item. But I do want to request let the committee actually go back to planning and development services section. In the question period, we do have a member of the public on the line. His name is Tony Huguenin, who had a question during that period, and we were remiss in letting him ask that question. So my request is that we go back. Certainly, I think if we just finish this item and then go back, if that's okay, that would be great.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. So we will call for the vote for this information. All those in favor? Thank you. That has passed. And I'll refer it back to Councillor Levy. If you would like to address Mr. Huguenin, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm reading Mr. Huguenin's comments. I didn't realize he was requested to speak, but we can give you 2 minutes, Tony, if you wish.
Oh, yes, thank you, Chair Levy. I had a problem
Levy.
Leave it good. Thank you, Chair Levy. I just had problems getting that raised hand on my tablet, so thank you. Very quickly, thank you on behalf of the community as well for how things went through with 123 Robert Street East. And that leads me to offer, I'm retired, I have time. You folks are extremely busy. Every time I have the opportunity to talk to you, which I'm grateful for, you guys have a lot on your plate. Your agendas are amazingly large. I'm aware that from time to time in planning, ad hoc committees are struck. If there's anything I can do to volunteer my time as a member of the public on any ad hoc committee that may come in the future with 123 Robert Street East, if it's needed, I do have the time and wanted to offer my time and civic services to the municipality to help out in any way, because I appreciate all the work that you've done for the community on this file.
Thank you very much, Tony. I appreciate your offer. This is not something we value your input. It's been invaluable, and I've enjoyed our many conversations, but we really need staff and the developer to do this, and then council to do their job and the residents to do theirs. So status quo is how we'll be moving forward. But as usual, you will contact all of us, I'm sure, and we'll have a few more conversations about this. So thank you very much for sticking it out with us tonight.
With great
Thanks,
appreciation. Tony. Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to matters of for consideration under Finance and Corporate Services. Item 1, the Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities. It's an update number 1, CL 2020-07. The recommended action is that the mayor be authorized to sign the official declaration from the Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities, and that the draft terms of reference for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Ad Hoc Committee be approved as presented, and that the staff be directed to proceed with the recruitment of ad hoc committee members that shall represent the diversity of the town and broad cross-section of residents to ensure representation by community members with lived experiences or service in agencies related to one or more of the following areas: ethnocultural and linguistic diversity, racialized communities or people of color, francophone, new immigrants, indigenous communities, LGBTQ2S+ individuals, individuals with disabilities, including mental health disabilities, seniors, older adults, individuals living with low income or homelessness, post-secondary students and youth, and faith-based diversity. I do need a mover and a seconder, and then we'll have discussion. Moved by Councillor Mayotte, seconded by Councillor Cummings. In my mind, it's a very full report. It is for the development of an ad hoc committee, so that we are in a better position and to be part of the Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities. Are there any questions, or would you like any elaboration from our clerk who prepared the report? Seeing none, I will ask for the vote. Oh, sorry, Councillor Vadamancourt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to support the motion. I just had a question with respect to whether there was any outreach to the other North Simcoe municipalities to see if there was something that could be done on a kind of a regional basis as opposed to an individual basis. I don't know what our adjoining municipalities are doing, but maybe that's something we can look at down the road. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, has there been any discussion?
Certainly, I can speak to that. There hasn't been. I mean, this joining of the coalition is what sort of started us down this path, which is a process of its own. And I did reach out to other municipalities who have joined the coalition, which don't happen to be any of our direct neighbors. But certainly, it's a really great point, because I think the larger the group, the larger the impact there will be. But definitely, it was not a part of this report, reaching out to our neighbor communities. But hopefully we'll see that advance in the future.
Councillor Klug.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to staff for this great report. I know this is an item that I brought forward to council some time ago, and we've, as noted in the report, we've had some issues because of COVID getting through to the coalition. I do agree with Councillor Vadamancourt. Working with the other municipalities would be great in our area, but I'm happy to forge ahead and see us be added to this list of municipalities. It is a municipal, on a municipal by municipality, case by case, I guess. So I'd like to see them do this work, and perhaps we can work together for efficiencies, but this is us being added as the town of Penetanguishene to that coalition. And I think we have great work to do, and hopefully they'll join us as well as we move forward.
Very good. Thank you very much, Councillor Klug. That being said, I don't see any other requests for discussion. So if we could call for the vote, please. All those in favor? Thank you very much. And that has been passed. So referrals to upcoming agenda and staff. Referrals at the Finance and Corporate Services section endorse the following additional and existing referrals to upcoming agendas and staff. The Huronia Airport Commission roadmap update, procedural bylaw review, presentations and delegations, and the OPP leasing costs CNCC recovery. Any additions or, oh, Mayor LaRue?
Madam Chair, I'm wondering if the procedural bylaw review presentations and delegations could be removed.
Madam Clerk?
I think it could be removed, but it is not something that the bylaw amending the procedural bylaw has not been brought forward. I'd still need to do the notice period. So it's perfectly fine for it to remain until all of that is done, if committee is more comfortable with that, because there is still work to be done, but certainly your call.
I was the member that wanted it, that had it added, and at this point, because we haven't got our final report at this particular point, I would prefer to see it left on the agenda, if that's all right.
Madam Chair, I have no objection. That's fine.
Thank you very much. So if I could have a mover and a seconder for the referral items as they are. Councillor Mayotte and Councillor Levy. On all those in favor? And that is so moved. Question period from the media and public. I don't see any hands, so I will pass it back to you, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saint-Amand. And with that, we are adjourned, and we will again take a 5-minute break before we go into our special committee meeting to give staff that are not required for this meeting and Rogers to leave.